Hello everyone. Today's my topic for discussion is diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus, it's a Greek word where dia means true and Binazine, the meaning pass. Diabetes means pass through. Specifically, body mass is passed through urine. Specifically, mellitus, sweet. Urine becomes sweet because of the presence of glucose. So the definition of diabetes mellitus is it is a metabolic syndrome mainly due to impaired carbohydrate, fat and protein metabolism, either caused by lack of insulin secretion or a decreased sensitivity of the tissue to the insulin. Now, the classification of diabetes mellitus. It is broadly divided into two groups, namely type 1 diabetes mellitus, or which is also known as insulin dependent diabetes mellitus IDDM, and type 2 diabetes mellitus, which is also known as non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus NIDDM. So the type 1 diabetes mellitus is specifically known as juvenile onset diabetes mellitus. Why? Because it mainly the onset of this type 1 diabetes mellitus is usually occurs at about 14 years of age, and that is why the specific reason for it is called as juvenile diabetes. Juvenile means teenage in Latin word. Okay, now the cause for type 1 diabetes mellitus. It is mainly due to by lack of insulin secretion. Insulin completely deficient due to destruction of pancreatic beta cells, and this destruction of these pancreatic beta cells can be either due to autoimmunity means the this insulin is detected by body's own antibody, that is a cause as autoimmune disorder, or it can be a viral infection, or it can be a hereditary tendency of beta cell degeneration. So this is regarding type 1 diabetes mellitus, and the treatment here it is the drug of choice is insulin. Since the patient is of insulin dependent IDDM fail to secrete insulin, the administration of external insulin is required to treat type 1 diabetes mellitus. And type 2. Type 2 is also known as non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, or it is also known as adult onset diabetes mellitus. Why? Because the onset is generally above 40 years of age. That is why we can call it as adult onset diabetes mellitus. And the cause of type 2 diabetes mellitus is usually decreased sensitivity of target tissues to insulin, that is known as insulin resistance. So here the reduced sensitivity of insulin, we call it as insulin resistance, is due to inadequate insulin receptors on the cell surfaces of the target tissues. So usually this is occurring in later age. I said it is already after the 40 years of age, and usually type 2 diabetes mellitus is found in an obese person or a person having metabolic syndrome. Okay, now the symptoms. So here which shows the metabolic changes in type 2 diabetes mellitus, where there will be decreased number of insulin receptors on the peripheral tissues. Here, lack of normal response to insulin. So I said in type 2 diabetes mellitus, it can be due to decreased insulin receptors on the cell surface of the target tissue. Now the difference, this figure which explains the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Type 1, there is insufficient insulin. Type 2, there is insulin resistant. Okay, so here you can see that diminished insulin, the purple color which representing the insulin, there will be diminished insulin than the amount of glucose which is present in the blood, so that what will happen, the cells are not able to intake the excess glucose because of the deficient or insufficient insulin. That is the cause for type 1 diabetes mellitus. So there will be diminished glucose uptake. In type 2, even though adequate insulins are there, the receptors are inadequate insulin receptors on the cell surface of the target tissue. So that is again the reason there will be defect in the signaling to GLUT4. What is the role of GLUT4 here? GLUT4 is the insulin dependent glucose transporter which help for the intake of glucose into the glucose transporter for dependent cells, specifically the adipose tissue and the skeletal muscle, where the glucose can be taken into the cells. Okay, so here in type 2 there will be glucose transporter T4 receptors are defective in specifically in the muscle cell. So what will happen? The glucose intake does not occur and the diminished glucose uptake occurs. So this table which explains the comparison of types of diabetes mellitus type 1 and type 2. So what all we have discussed now? Frequency. Type 1 diabetes mellitus seen in 5 to 10% population, whereas type 2 diabetes mellitus can be seen in 90 to 95% type of diabetes mellitus are of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Age of onset, juvenile, that is less than 20 years in type 1, then more than 40 years, sorry it is years, in type 2. Then onset of symptoms, usually in type 1, abrupt and severe due to destruction of beta cells of pancreas, whereas in type 2, there will be gradual development of symptoms. And type 1, plasma insulin will be very much low. Type 2, it can be normal to high. Body weight usually low or normal in case of type 1 diabetes. Type 2 DM people are usually obese. Blood glucose is increased in both cases. Insulin sensitivity, which is normal in type 1 and type 2, it is reduced. Ketosis is a common manifestation of type 1 diabetes mellitus. Ketosis rarely occurs in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Acute complication in type 1 is ketoacidosis, whereas in type 2 DM, hyperosmolar coma is a acute complication. Usually type 1 DM can be treated only with insulin. Type 2, it is not always necessary to supplement with insulin. Other hypoglycemic drugs also can cure type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now this figure which explains the plasma glucose levels in OGTT. OGTT means oral glucose tolerance test in normal persons and in diabetic mellitus patients. So this OGTT actually I have not covered, will be taken in another class. OGTT is a specific test to diagnose diabetes mellitus. So according to OGTT, these are the values for the diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. You can see fasting should be more than 126 milligram per deciliter and 1 hour after glucose. It is not prescribed, but it can be high above the normal range. Then 2 hours after glucose it should be, if it is greater than 200 milligram per deciliter. In more than one occasion, in OGTT itself or FBS and PPBS in more than one occasion, that is a criteria for diagnosing diabetes mellitus. So keep it in mind, if the FPS, fasting blood sugar, is greater than 126 milligram per deciliter, that is a diagnostic criteria for diabetes. And you should know the normal ranges. Fasting blood sugar for a normal person is 70 to 110 milligram per deciliter, and postprandial it is 90 to 140 milligram per deciliter. And IGT, what is IGT? Impaired glucose tolerance test. This will be describing again in OGTT. So if the fasting blood sugar level is between 110 and 126 milligram per deciliter, that is a diagnostic criteria for impaired glucose tolerance test. This is a specific condition of pre-diabetes. Similarly, 2 hours after glucose, it is between 140 to 199 milligram per deciliter, also can be a criteria for the pre-diabetes. So in detail about the diagnostic criteria for diabetes, what all I have said, if the fasting plasma glucose is more than 126 milligram per deciliter on more than one occasion, or if 2 hour post glucose load value of GTT is more than 200 mg per deciliter even at one occasion. Or RBS, what is RBS? Random plasma glucose. It is more than 200 milligram per deciliter on more than one occasion. So this diagnosis should not be based on a single random test alone, it should be repeated. Now coming to the metabolic changes of diabetes mellitus. So we know that diabetes mellitus എന്ന് കേൾക്കുമ്പോഴേ what will come into our mind? Insulin deficiency and high blood glucose level, that is known as hyperglycemia. How does this hyperglycemia occurs? Okay, why there is? If it is in type 1, it is insulin deficiency or insulin insufficiency. In type 2, it is insulin resistance. So when there is insulin deficiency or insulin resistance occurs, what all the metabolic changes which occurs in human body? That explains this figure. So what will happen? When there is deficiency, the blood glucose level will be highly elevated, but the cells are not able to utilize this blood glucose as the energy source. So the cells will be utilizing alternative mechanisms to increase get the blood to get the glucose for their energy needs. So here we can see there will be increased gluconeogenesis. We have already learned carbohydrate metabolism. You know what is gluconeogenesis. So synthesis of glucose through non-carbohydrate substrates. So here what will happen in diabetes mellitus patients, because of the high glucagon level, there will be more proteolysis. Muscle proteins will be lysed and release of more amino acid occurs, specifically alanine. Alanine will be contributing as a source of glucogenic amino acid for the gluconeogenesis. And through gluconeogenesis, blood glucose will be elevated, and through the gluconeogenesis, glucose can be utilized by the cells also. And this is the cause, muscle protein is getting utilized, that is the cause for weight loss and also polyphagia. Then the role of oxaloacetate. Oxaloacetate is one of the step for the gluconeogenesis. We know that pyruvate is converted to oxaloacetate by pyruvate carboxylase. So this oxaloacetate is more utilized for the gluconeogenesis. But what will happen in diabetes mellitus specifically? There will be more lipolysis also. More lipolysis means more free fatty acid. More free fatty acid means more acetyl coenzyme. More acetyl coenzyme, usually the acetyl coenzyme has to enter into TCA cycle and should be getting utilized. But here this accumulated acetyl coenzyme, because of the depletion of oxaloacetate, will be channeled for the synthesis of ketone bodies. So more ketone bodies synthesized in case of uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, that can be leads to ketonemia and ketonuria. And excess acetyl coenzyme can be even utilized for the cholesterol synthesis. So these can be, the accumulation of cholesterol can be the reason for the vascular and cardiac complications in diabetes mellitus patients. And next is this hyperglycemia itself is a reason for more excretion of glucose through the urine, so that leads to glucoseuria. So glucoseuria is the reason for polyuria, because glucose being an osmotic substance will extract more water along with it, so more urine will be excreted. So polyuria occurs. At the same time, when our body is losing water, that can stimulate our thirst center, so polydipsia also occurs. So this polyuria, polydipsia and polyphagia are the cardinal symptoms of diabetes mellitus. So this figure which explains the metabolic adaptations or changes occurs in diabetes mellitus. So here this is also again the figure which shows the metabolic derangements in diabetes mellitus. So what all we have discussed only. The red arrow was showing the increase in all those pathways. So we have seen there will be hyperglycemia, there will be glucoseuria, there will be ketonemia and ketonuria, and the high cholesterol level can even lead to atherosclerosis and cardiovascular diseases. Now move to the cardinal symptoms of diabetes mellitus. Cardinal symptoms already said, 3 P's, that is polyuria, polydipsia and polyphagia. So when the blood glucose level exceeds the renal threshold, so we should know what is renal threshold. Renal threshold of blood glucose is 180 milligram per deciliter. When the blood glucose level exceeds this 180 mg per deciliter, what will happen? The excess level will be excreted through the urine. So because of the osmotic effect, the glucose will hold more water also. That condition is known as polyuria. So to compensate for this loss of water, more water will be taken. That condition is known as polydipsia, which is known as excessive thirst. Then Because of more breakdown of protein, it can lead to loss of weight. To compensate the loss of glucose and protein, patient will take more food. That condition is known as polyphagia. So these three are the cardinal symptoms of diabetes mellitus. So the immediate symptom of diabetes mellitus is the patient may presented with these three cardinal symptoms, and usually if the doctor asks, he can find out that there may be loss of body weight, weakness and tiredness and all. Then if we check the blood glucose level, hyperglycemia may be there, and sometimes the urine sugar also may be present. Then yeah, these are the cardinal symptoms. Now the immediate complications. Immediate complications means the patient may be more prone to develop infections. Infections means why? Because the glucose is a good medium for the development of bacterial growth. Okay, so whenever they have got a small cut or minor injury, there may be chances of more getting infections and all. Then specifically type 1 diabetes and uncontrolled type 2 diabetes mellitus, there can be ketosis and ketonuria. What is the reason for ketosis? I have already explained. Then there can be hypercholesterolemia. So the accumulated acetylcoenzyme is the reason for the synthesis of more ketone bodies and cholesterol. So these things can lead to ketosis, ketonuria, hypercholesterolemia, etc. And even hypertension also can develop. Then regarding the chronic complications of diabetes mellitus. So chronic complications are like myocardial infarction. Why? The high cholesterol level and all those things, atherosclerosis and all can lead to myocardial infarction or heart attack. Then microangiopathy. The small blood vessels are getting affected, so it can be lead to microangiopathy. Then diabetic retinopathy, that is or cataract can be developed in diabetes mellitus. The reason here it is why the diabetic retinopathy or cataract occurs, because the more the cells specifically not dependent on insulin, such as lens and all, can take up more glucose when there is hyperglycemia. So what will happen? The excess level undergoing reduction to form sorbitol, glucose alcohol form of glucose. So sorbitol formation occurs in the lens of the eye. So being an osmotic substance, the sorbitol causes osmotic effect inside the lens and can lead to, which can affect the fragility of the lens and can lead to cataract. Then diabetic nephropathy or renopathy can lead to renal failure. Then neuropathy, that is mainly due to diabetic gangrene. Now the acute complications of diabetes mellitus. Ketosis is the most common in diabetes mellitus. When the rates of synthesis of ketone body exceeds the ability of extrahepatic tissues to utilize them, there will be accumulation of ketone bodies in blood. That is known as ketonemia. And when there is excess ketone bodies, the excess level will be excreted through the urine. That is known as ketonuria. And we know that the ketone bodies are acetone, acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate. So the acetone, being a volatile one, can exhale through the breath. So there will be acetone smell in breath. All these three together constitute the condition known as ketosis. The diagnosis of ketosis is mainly done with a specific test known as Rothera's test. Now the causes for ketosis is mainly diabetes mellitus and starvation. This topic will be explaining again in lipid metabolism. Okay, just to understand, the cause of ketosis are diabetes mellitus and starvation, that will be discussed later. Then, what is the meaning of hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma? That is actually due to elevation of blood glucose in very high levels, usually greater than 900 milligram per deciliter or more. That condition, hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma, can develop in patients with diabetes mellitus. So this would increase the osmolality of extracellular fluid. The excess glucose can cause or increase in osmolality of ECF. So osmotic diuresis, which leads to water and electrolyte depletion, and because of that the coma results from dehydration of cerebral cells due to hypertonicity of extracellular fluid. That condition is known as hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma. Now another point from this diabetes mellitus is that glycated hemoglobin. It is one of the tests for the therapeutic monitoring of diabetes mellitus, but nowadays glycated hemoglobin even can count as a diagnostic tool for the diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. The meaning of glycated hemoglobin is that glycation means a non-enzymatic reaction. Glycosylation is enzymatic. So glycated hemoglobin means a non-enzymatic attachment of hemoglobin to the glucose, which leads to the formation of glycohemoglobin. So HbA1c, it's also known as HbA1c. So when there is excess blood sugar level, the excess glucose can bind to the proteins, like here it is hemoglobin. This shows the figure. This glycation will be parallel to the blood glucose level. Now, what is the significance of this HbA1c or glycated hemoglobin? Specifically, it is for monitoring. Here it is written not for diagnosis, but can be counted as a diagnostic test also nowadays. Normal level of HbA1c is less than 6%. So we know that the RBC lifespan is 120 days. So if you are estimating the glycated hemoglobin, we can understand the average glucose concentration during last 120 days. Because once RBC is getting lysed only, the glucose will be detached to the hemoglobin molecule or RBC molecule. That is why we can take it as an average of blood glucose concentration during last 120 days. So you should know the normal values. Normal HbA1c is less than 5.5%. Impaired glucose tolerance test, it is 5.6 to 6.5%. A well-controlled diabetes, usually the HbA1c level between 6.6 and 7%. If that patient is not controlling his diabetes properly, with not taking proper care, like not taking treatment properly, or not doing his exercise properly, or not controlling his diet, it can be even goes above 7%, 7 to 8%, and 8 to 10% in poorly controlled and uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. Now, reduction in 1% glycated hemoglobin or HbA1c will decrease long-term complications to an extent of 30%. So, it is always mandatory to maintain the HbA1c level between 5.5 to 6.5 maximum. So, the estimation should be done at least once in every 3 months in all patients with diabetes mellitus patients. An advantage of HbA1c over fasting plasma glucose estimation is that for HbA1c or glycated hemoglobin, fasting sample is not required. The test can be done at any time, and low intra-individual variability, that is usually less than 2%, and like the FBS and PPBS can be varied, depends on the type of food what we are taking and all, or the time that we are taking and all. Then HbA1c sample is stable while blood glucose level is lowered unless the precautions are taken. We know that if the blood glucose is not taken in the fluoride bottle, automatically we will get a false negative or low value when we are estimating the blood glucose. Another advantage, HbA1c value is not altered by any acute factors, while many factors will affect the plasma blood glucose values. HbA1c, which reflects a long-time blood glucose control, while plasma glucose estimation will show the result of particular point of time only. HbA1c, which is a better index for predicting complications such as retinopathy. HbA1c is unaffected by recent food intake or recent changes in blood glucose. Now the precautions for interpretation, any condition where RBC lifespan is reduced, specifically like anemia, abnormal RBCs, pregnancy and all, can reflect the lowered HbA1c value because the time averaged value is less in such conditions. That is why In this kind of conditions where patient having severe anemia or having some abnormal RBC due to some other genetic diseases, pregnancy and all, HbA1c will not give a proper interpretation. Now, the treatment for diabetes mellitus. First of all, we should control our diet, weight reduction to ideal body weight to avoid sugar and sweets. Then proper exercise, should not have a sedentary lifestyle. Then adequate control of cholesterol, blood pressure, and should take proper anti-diabetic drugs according to the doctor's prescription. Then the management of diabetes mellitus, what we were discussing in detail. Diet and exercise should be the first line of treatment. That itself can control the diabetes properly. Then hypoglycemic drugs, which decrease the blood glucose level. They are mainly used in type 2 diabetes mellitus because type 1 is usually mainly dependent on insulin to maintain the blood glucose level. So in type 2, the drugs like sulfonylureas, example tolbutamide, glibenclamide. The mechanism of action of these two drugs or under the category of sulfonylureas, which will stimulate insulin secretion, because in type 2 diabetes mellitus there will be insulin resistance due to lack of insulin receptors, since they may cause alarming hypoglycemia. Bigonides are more preferred. Bigonides are more preferred than sulfonylureas. Why? Because that can cause hypoglycemia. Glitazones or gliptins are dipeptidyl peptidase inhibitor that inhibit the breakdown of GLP-1 and increase the incretin effect. Another drug, alpha glucosidase inhibitor. Acarbose inhibits the alpha glucosidase, so the absorption of glucose itself is getting reduced. Then insulin replacement therapy, it is mainly applicable for the type 1 diabetes mellitus, but sometimes in type 2 also it can be used where the oral hypoglycemic drugs are not sufficient to control the blood glucose level. We should know what is hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is usually harmful, but hypoglycemia is more fatal because it is a life-threatening condition. If plasma blood glucose level less than 50 mg per deciliter is life-threatening, can cause many dangerous deleterious effects to the human body, because without glucose life is not possible for long time, because brain cells are mainly dependent on blood glucose to control the body mechanism. Now the causes of hypoglycemia, it can be either overdose of insulin in case of type 2 or type 1 diabetes mellitus patient, those who are taking insulin. So overdose can cause hypoglycemia, that is the most common cause. Then postprandial hypoglycemia, that is 2 to 3 hours after a meal, a transient hypoglycemia is seen in some patients or persons. This is due to over-secretion of insulin. Or insulinoma, that is insulin secreting tumors. Now regarding the laboratory test for the diabetes mellitus, blood glucose should be checked monthly, lipid profile should be checked once in a year, specifically profile under that cholesterol, low density lipoprotein, high density lipoprotein, triglycerides, etc. should be checked. Then microalbuminuria should be checked once in a year. Microalbuminuria will be learning it in RFT, but just briefly I will talk. Microalbuminuria is a condition where excretion of albumin between 30 to 300 milligram per day occur, which is an early indication of diabetic nephropathy. Usually albumin or protein excretion through the urine is very minute, which cannot be detected by the usual test. So when the kidney involvement occurs in chronic diabetes mellitus, there can be microalbuminuria in diabetes mellitus patients. That is the amount between 30 to 300 milligram per day of microalbumin excreted through the urine. That is known as microalbuminuria, which is an early indication of diabetic nephropathy. Then serum creatinine should be checked once in a year to monitor the kidney function. Then glycated hemoglobin should be checked monthly, So this is all about diabetes mellitus. So we'll be continue with oral glucose tolerance test in coming classes. So this class you should be know about diabetes mellitus, what are the causes, then what are the types of diabetes mellitus, what are the symptoms, acute and chronic symptoms of diabetes mellitus, and you should know the diagnosis and treatment, and mainly regarding the metabolic changes which occurs in diabetes mellitus. Thank you.